The rain battered Seattle's streets, a relentless drumbeat that drowned out the world, but Elena couldn't hear it over the scream of her own heart. She stood in the law office, her boots squeaking on the polished floor, as her brother Michael grinned like he'd won the lottery. He had millions, a mansion, the family business, all handed to him in their father's will, while Elena clutched a single faded scarf and a secret that could unravel everything. Elena, 28, had never been the favored child. Her father, a towering figure in Seattle's tech scene, had built an empire of innovation and wealth, but his love was reserved for Michael, the son who mirrored his ambition. Elena, with her quiet defiance and paint-splattered jeans, was the outlier, the artist who'd chosen a life of passion over profit. She'd expected nothing from the will, but the scarf, her mother's, soft and smelling faintly of lavender, felt like a cruel consolation. The lawyer's voice droned on, detailing Michael's inheritance. The estate, the stocks, the yacht. Elena's fingers tightened around the scarf, her mother's memory a faint warmth against the cold reality of her father's rejection. Michael, 32, stood across the room, his tailored suit a stark contrast to Elena's worn leather jacket. His smirk was a blade, cutting deeper with every word from the lawyer. "You got what you wanted, didn't you?" he said, his voice low, taunting. "Mom's old rag. You always were sentimental." Elena's jaw clenched, but she said nothing. She'd learned long ago that words didn't win battles with Michael. Instead, she tucked the scarf into her bag, her heart heavy with a truth she hadn't yet spoken. The scarf wasn't just a memento. It was a key. The will reading was held in a sleek downtown office, all glass and steel, a monument to her father's success. Outside, the city pulsed with life, cars honking, lights flickering through the rain, but inside, the air was thick with tension. Elena's eyes caught on a woman sitting in the corner, a stranger among the family's inner circle. Maya, 30, was striking, with long black hair and green eyes that seemed to see through the room's pretense. She was the lawyer's assistant, there to notarize documents, but her presence felt like a spark in the sterile space. Elena's breath hitched when their eyes met, a fleeting connection that made her forget, just for a moment, the weight of her loss. As the lawyer dismissed them, Elena lingered, her fingers tracing the scarf's frayed edges. Maya approached, her steps deliberate, her voice soft but steady. "I'm sorry about your father," she said, her eyes holding Elena's with an intensity that felt like a lifeline. "And about the will. It doesn't seem fair." Elena's throat tightened. Fairness had never been part of her family's equation. But something in Maya's gaze, empathy, curiosity, maybe something more, made Elena want to stay, to talk, to unravel the knot of grief and anger in her chest. They ended up at a cafe down the street, the kind of place where the coffee was strong and the tables were scarred with stories. Rain streaked the windows, blurring the world outside, and Elena found herself telling Maya things she'd never said aloud. About her mother, who died when Elena was 12, leaving behind only the scarf and a handful of memories. About her father, who'd never understood her art or her heart. About the ache of being invisible in a family obsessed with legacy. Maya listened, her green eyes steady, her fingers brushing Elena's as she passed her a napkin. "You're not invisible," Maya said softly. "Not to me." The scarf lay on the table between them, its faded blue threads a silent witness to their conversation. Elena hadn't planned to mention it, but the words spilled out. "There's something about it," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "My mother used to say it held secrets. I thought she was joking, but now, I'm not sure." Maya's brow furrowed and she leaned closer, her breath warm against the cool air. "What kind of secrets?" she asked. Elena hesitated, her heart pounding. She didn't know why she trusted Maya, but she did. "I think it's a message," she said. "Something my mother left for me. Something my father didn't want me to find." That night, Elena couldn't sleep. She sat in her small apartment, the scarf spread across her lap, her fingers searching for answers in its worn fabric. She'd always known her mother was different, quietly rebellious, a dreamer trapped in a marriage of expectations. The scarf was her mother's favorite, worn through years of laughter and tears. Elena's eyes caught on a tiny, uneven stitch near the hem, out of place among the careful weaving. She tugged at it, her breath catching as a small folded piece of paper slipped free. It was a note, written in her mother's elegant script. "Find the truth in the vault. You are enough." Elena's heart raced. A vault? Her father had a safe in his office, but she'd never had access. The note was a spark, igniting questions she'd buried for years. What truth? Why had her mother hidden it? And why had her father left her the scarf, knowing it might lead her to answers he'd kept from her? She thought of Maya, of the warmth in her eyes, and knew she couldn't do this alone. She texted Maya, her fingers trembling. I found something. Can we meet? The next morning they met at the cafe again, the rain still falling, the city still humming. Maya's presence was a steadying force, her confidence tempered by a vulnerability that mirrored Elena's own. As Elena showed her the note, Maya's eyes widened. This is big, she said, her voice low. Your father. He was powerful. If there's a secret he didn't want out, it could change everything. Elena nodded, her throat tight. She didn't know what they'd find, but she knew she wanted Maya by her side when they did. Maya's apartment was a stark contrast to Elena's cluttered, paint-splattered space. It was all clean lines and warm wood, with bookshelves overflowing and a single orchid blooming by the window. They sat on the floor, the scarf and note spread out before them, as the Seattle rain painted shadows on the walls. Elena felt exposed, her mother's words burning in her mind. You are enough. She wanted to believe it, but years of her father's dismissal had carved doubt into her bones. Maya, sensing her hesitation, reached out, her hand resting lightly on Elena's. We'll figure this out, she said. Together. The vault, they decided, had to be in her father's office at the top of his company's headquarters, a glass tower that loomed over downtown Seattle. Getting in wouldn't be easy. Michael, now the CEO, had already tightened security, his paranoia as sharp as his ambition. Elena knew the building from childhood visits, sneaking in to draw in the corners while her father worked. But now it felt like enemy territory. Maya, with her legal background, suggested they start with public records, anything that might hint at what her mother meant by the truth. They spent hours combing through online archives but found nothing. The note was their only lead, and it was maddeningly vague. As days turned into weeks, Elena and Maya grew closer, their late-night research sessions blurring into moments of quiet intimacy. One night, as they pored over old family photos, Maya's laughter filled the room, bright and unguarded. You were such a serious kid, she said, pointing to a picture of Elena, age 10, clutching a sketchbook. Elena smiled, her chest tight with something she couldn't name. I had to be, she said. My dad didn't exactly approve of me. Maya's eyes softened and she leaned closer, her voice barely a whisper. He was wrong. The moment hung between them, fragile and electric. Elena's heart pounded, her eyes locked on Maya's. She'd never been good at this, letting someone in, letting herself feel. But Maya's hand found hers, and the world narrowed to the warmth of her touch. They didn't kiss, not yet, but the air crackled with possibility, a promise of something neither could ignore. Elena wanted to stay in that moment forever, but the note on the table pulled her back. The truth was out there, and it was tied to her mother, her father, and the scarf that had brought them together. Their first attempt to access the vault was a disaster. They'd slipped into the building after hours, using Elena's old employee badge from a summer internship. The security guard, a new hire, didn't recognize her, and an alarm tripped when they reached the executive floor. They barely escaped, ducking into an alley as sirens wailed. Maya was breathless, her eyes wide with adrenaline, but she laughed, grabbing Elena's hand. We're terrible spies, she said, and Elena couldn't help but laugh too, her fear melting under Maya's warmth. But the failure stung. Michael would know someone had tried to get in and he'd be watching. Back at Maya's apartment they regrouped. Elena's frustration boiled over. What if this is nothing? She said, her voice cracking. What if I'm chasing a ghost? Maya knelt beside her, her hands framing Elena's face. Your mother left you that note for a reason, she said. She believed in you. So do I. The words hit Elena like a wave, washing away years of doubt. She leaned into Maya's touch, their foreheads resting together, and for the first time she felt seen. They decided to try again, but smarter. Maya used her connections at the law firm to dig into her father's business dealings. What she found was a series of offshore accounts tied to a shell company her father had never mentioned. The accounts were active even after his death, and Michael's name was on them. Elena's stomach churned. Her brother had always been ruthless, But this felt different. Was this the truth her mother meant? Was Michael hiding something her father had buried? Their second attempt at the vault required a plan. Maya suggested enlisting help from a former colleague, a hacker named Sam who owed her a favor. Sam was skeptical but intrigued, especially when Elena showed him the note. "This is some Da Vinci Code shit," he said, grinning. He gave them a device to bypass the vault's digital lock, but warned them, "You get one shot. Michael's got cameras everywhere." Elena nodded, her resolve hardening. She wasn't just doing this for herself anymore. She was doing it for her mother and for the woman who'd become her anchor. The night of the break-in, Seattle was shrouded in fog, the city's lights muted and ghostly. Elena's heart pounded as they slipped into the building, this time through a service entrance Sam had mapped out. Maya's hand was steady in hers, a silent reminder that they were in this together. They reached the vault, a sleek metal door hidden behind a false wall in her father's office. Elena's hand shook as she entered the code Sam had given them. The lock clicked and the door swung open, revealing a small dark space filled with files, drives, and a single locked box. Elena's breath caught as she lifted the box, its weight heavy in her hands. She didn't know what was inside, but she felt the gravity of it, the truth her mother had hidden. Maya's eyes met hers, filled with a mix of fear and determination. "Whatever's in there," Maya said, "we'll face it together." Elena nodded, her heart swelling. For the first time in years she didn't feel alone. The box was heavier than Elena expected, its cold metal surface a stark contrast to the warmth of Maya's hand in hers. They didn't open it in the vault, too risky, with Michael's cameras watching. Instead, they slipped out of the building, the fog cloaking their escape as they hurried back to Maya's apartment. Seattle's streets were quiet, the city holding its breath as if it knew the weight of what they carried. Elena's mind raced with possibilities, each more unsettling than the last. What could her mother have hidden that was worth all this secrecy? Back in the safety of Maya's living room, they set the box on the table. It was old, its edges worn, with a small lock that looked deceptively simple. Elena's fingers traced the scarf, still tucked in her bag, as if it could guide her. Maya found a set of lockpicks in a drawer, a relic from a rebellious phase. She said with a sheepish grin, "Don't ask," she added, and Elena laughed, the sound easing the tension in her chest. Maya's hands were steady as she worked the lock, her focus a quiet strength that Elena clung to. When the lock clicked open, they both froze, the air thick with anticipation. Inside the box were letters, dozens of them, tied with a faded ribbon. They were in her mother's handwriting, addressed to someone named Clara. Elena's heart stuttered. Clara was her mother's best friend, a name she hadn't heard since childhood. The letters were intimate, filled with longing and love, words that painted a picture of a relationship her mother had kept hidden. Elena read one aloud, her voice trembling. "Clara, you are my heart's home, the one truth I can't speak aloud. I'll protect you always." Maya's eyes widened, her hand finding Elena's. "Your mother. She was in love with Clara," she said softly. This was her secret. The realization hit Elena like a tidal wave. Her mother, trapped in a marriage to a man who valued power over love, had found solace in Clara. The scarf, the note, the vault, it was all a trail her mother had left, a way to tell Elena who she really was. But there was more. Tucked among the letters was a legal document, yellowed with age, outlining a trust fund in Clara's name, funded by her father's company. It was worth millions, but it had been buried, hidden from the world and from Michael. Elena's mind reeled. Her father must have known, must have hidden the truth to protect his image. Michael, too, might have suspected, but he'd never found the proof. The trust fund was still active, its existence a threat to Michael's inheritance. If it came to light, it could unravel his claim to the company, the money, everything. Elena looked at Maya, her heart pounding. "This changes everything," she said. Maya nodded, her eyes fierce. "We need to find Clara." Their search for Clara was a labyrinth. Public records showed she'd left Seattle years ago, after Elena's mother died. Maya's legal connections turned up an address in Portland, but it was old, possibly outdated. They decided to go anyway, renting a car and driving through the rain-soaked Pacific Northwest. The road trip was tense, but it was also a revelation. Elena and Maya talked for hours, their stories weaving together, Elena's art, Maya's dreams of opening her own firm, their shared fears of being too much or not enough. Somewhere along the winding highways, Elena realized she was falling for Maya, her heart opening in ways she'd never allowed before. In Portland, they found Clara in a small, cluttered bookshop, her hair silver but her eyes still bright with the fire Elena remembered from childhood. Clara's face softened when she saw the scarf, her fingers trembling as she touched it. "She never stopped wearing this," Clara said, her voice thick with emotion. She told them everything: how she and Elena's mother had loved in secret, how her father had threatened to ruin Clara if the truth came out. The trust fund was her mother's way of ensuring Clara's freedom, but it had been locked away, its existence erased by her father's lawyers. Clara's story was a knife to Elena's heart, but it was also a gift. She saw her mother clearly for the first time, not just as a wife or a mother, but as a woman who'd loved fiercely, who'd fought for her truth. Elena felt Maya's hand in hers, grounding her, and she knew she wanted to fight for her own truth too. But the danger was real. Michael would do anything to keep the trust fund hidden, to protect his legacy. They had to move fast. They returned to Seattle, the letters and documents in tow, their plan forming. Elena wanted to honor her mother's wishes, to give Clara what was rightfully hers, but exposing the trust fund meant confronting Michael. They met with Sam again, who hacked into Michael's private server, uncovering emails that confirmed he knew about the trust fund and had been siphoning its funds for years. The evidence was damning, but so was the risk. Michael was powerful, connected, and ruthless. Elena's hand shook as she held the scarf, its weight a reminder of her mother's courage. She wouldn't let her down. The drive back to Seattle was quiet, the weight of their discovery pressing down on Elena and Maya. The documents in the box letters, the trust fund agreement, and now Michael's incriminating emails were a ticking bomb. Elena stared out the window, the scarf in her lap, its faded threads a tether to her mother's courage. She felt Maya's gaze, steady and warm, and reached for her hand. "We're doing the right thing, aren't we?" Elena asked, her voice small. Maya's fingers tightened around hers. "We're doing what your mother wanted," she said. "That's enough." Confronting Michael required a plan. He was untouchable, surrounded by lawyers and loyalists, his influence stretching across Seattle's elite. Elena and Maya met with Clara again, this time in a diner outside the city, where the smell of greasy fries and coffee grounded their nerves. Clara agreed to go public with the trust fund, but only if Elena was sure. "Your mother wanted you to know her truth," Clara said, her eyes glistening. "She'd be proud of you." Elena's throat tightened, her mother's note echoing in her mind. "You are enough." For the first time she believed it. They enlisted Sam's help again, this time to leak the documents to a trusted journalist, someone Maya knew from her law firm days. The plan was simple but dangerous. Release the evidence anonymously, let the press expose Michael's fraud, and restore the trust fund to Clara. Sam set up an encrypted channel, ensuring their tracks were covered. But Elena knew Michael wouldn't go quietly. He'd built his life on her father's legacy, and he'd fight to keep it. The thought made her stomach churn, but Maya's presence, her quiet strength, her belief in Elena kept her steady. The night before the leak, they stayed up late in Maya's apartment, the city's lights glittering through the rain. Elena felt the pull of Maya's gaze, the unspoken tension that had grown between them. "I'm scared," Elena admitted, her voice barely audible. Maya moved closer, her hand brushing Elena's cheek. "You're not alone," she said. Their lips met, tentative at first, then fierce, a release of everything they'd held back. The kiss was a promise, a vow that whatever came next, they'd face it together. Elena's heart soared, her fears quieted by the certainty of Maya's love. The story broke the next morning, a headline screaming across every news outlet. Tech tycoon's son embroiled in fraud scandal. The journalist had done her job well, weaving the trust fund's existence into a narrative of greed and betrayal. Michael's face was everywhere, his polished image cracking under the weight of the truth. Elena watched the coverage from the cafe, her hand in Maya's, the scarf draped over her chair. The world was shifting, and she felt the weight of her mother's love, the strength of her own heart. But Michael struck back. A late-night call from Sam warned them. Michael's team was tracing the leak and they were closing in. Elena's apartment was no longer safe, and Maya's wasn't either. They packed light, taking only the essentials: the scarf, the letters, a few clothes, and moved to a cheap motel on the city's outskirts. The rain never stopped, a constant reminder of Seattle's unforgiving nature. Elena's fear was a living thing, but so was her resolve. She looked at Maya, her green eyes a beacon in the dark, and knew they'd made the right choice. Clara, too, was under pressure. Reporters hounded her bookshop, and Michael's lawyers sent threatening letters. But Clara was unshaken, her love for Elena's mother a fire that hadn't dimmed. "She gave me this life," Clara told Elena over a secure call. "I owe her this fight." Elena's eyes burned with tears, her mother's words echoing. Find the truth. They had, and now they had to protect it. Sam's skills kept them one step ahead, feeding false leads to Michael's team while the journalists dug deeper. New evidence surfaced: bank records, witness statements, even a former employee who'd seen Michael shred documents. The net was tightening, but so was the danger. One night, as Elena and Maya hid in the motel, a car lingered too long outside. Maya's hand found Elena's, her voice steady. "We'll get through this," she said. Elena nodded, her heart full. She wasn't just fighting for her mother anymore. She was fighting for them. The legal battle began in earnest, with Clara's lawyers filing claims to the trust fund. Michael's team fought dirty, spreading lies about Clara, about Elena, even about Maya. But the truth was a force of its own. Public opinion turned, the city's elite distancing themselves from Michael's sinking ship. Elena and Maya stayed in the shadows, their love a quiet strength amid the chaos. Every night they fell asleep tangled together, the scarf draped over the bed, a reminder of why they fought. The courtroom was a battlefield, all polished wood and hushed whispers, as Elena and Maya sat in the back, their hands clasped tightly. Michael stood at the defendant's table, his suit immaculate but his eyes hollow, the weight of his lies finally catching up. The scarf was tucked in Elena's bag, a silent talisman of her mother's love. As the judge read the verdict, the trust fund would be restored to Clara, and Michael would face charges for fraud and embezzlement. Elena's breath caught, her heart swelling with relief and grief. They'd won, but the cost had been high. The trial had been brutal, a public spectacle that tore open old wounds. Michael's lawyers had painted Elena as a jealous sister, Maya as a scheming opportunist, and Clara as a liar. But the evidence was undeniable: bank records, emails, the letters in her mother's handwriting. The journalist's work had tipped the scales, her articles fueling public outrage until Michael's empire began to crumble. Elena watched him now, his head bowed, and felt no triumph, only a quiet sorrow for the brother he could have been. After the verdict, Elena and Maya drove to Clara's bookshop in Portland, the scarf draped over Elena's shoulders like a shield. Clara greeted them with tears in her eyes, her arms wrapping them both in a hug that felt like home. "You did it," she whispered. She'd be so proud. They sat among the books, sharing stories of Elena's mother, her laugh, her courage, her love for Clara. The trust fund, now Clara's, would fund a foundation in her mother's name, supporting queer youth in Seattle. It was a legacy of love, one Elena vowed to carry forward. Back in Seattle, the city felt different, its rain softer, its lights brighter. Elena and Maya moved into a small house together, a place filled with art and books, and the scarf, now framed on the wall. Their love had grown through the chaos, a quiet certainty that anchored them. One evening as the rain fell, Maya proposed, her green eyes shining. "I want forever with you," she said, a ring glinting in her hand. Elena's tears fell as she said yes, her heart full of her mother's words. "You are enough." Michael's trial continued, his assets frozen, his reputation in ruins. He reached out once, a letter begging for forgiveness, but Elena couldn't respond. The brother she'd known was gone, replaced by a man who'd chosen greed over family. She let the letter sit unanswered, choosing instead to focus on the life she was building with Maya, with Clara, with the truth they'd fought for. The foundation's launch was a quiet event, held in a community center filled with young faces, their hope a mirror of Elena's own. She spoke of her mother, of Clara, of the love that had survived in secret. Maya stood beside her, her hand a steady warmth, as they dedicated the foundation to those who felt invisible. "You are enough," Elena told them, her voice breaking, and she felt her mother's presence in every word. Years later, Elena would walk Seattle's streets with Maya, their hands intertwined, the scarf's legacy woven into their lives. They'd face the storm and come out stronger, their love a testament to the truth they'd uncovered. The city still reigned, but Elena no longer felt drowned by it. She felt alive, seen, loved. And as she looked at Maya, her heart knew. This was the secret that shook them all, the one worth fighting for. Thank you for listening. Like and subscribe to get notifications about next videos.